Mechamaru is the Iron Man of Jujutsu Kaisen, and there's no debate with that statement. The guy is a genius in building machinery like his robots and the ultimate giant Godzilla Mechamaru we saw in this week's episode, which is what Iron Man is known for. Mechamaru's body is weak and fragile due to heavenly restriction and needs machinery to keep him going. Very similar to Tony Stark, where he has to have that device connected to his heart in order to make sure that his heart doesn't stop beating. Akutami was born and grew up in the 90s, so chances are, during the first 3 phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was still in his early to mid-20s. And as we all know, Akutami loves putting in pop culture references and Easter eggs throughout his series, like how we saw a Digimon reference in the first episode of Season 2. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mechamaru was loosely based on Iron Man. And I mean, look at the first Iron Man film. Tony makes his first suit in a cave. We see Mechamaru in a cave in the middle of nowhere as well. So there are these little references between the two characters. I uploaded a video listing out all the pop culture references we have seen so far in this series. So guys, do go and check that video out if you haven't already. Episode 7 of Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen adapted chapters 81, 82, and a bit of 83 as well, until Gojo entered the scene at 8:31 in the evening in chapter 83. That is when the anime stopped adapting the chapter for this episode. The episode in general was awesome. If you're into mech anime, then this episode must have been a treat for you. Ultimate Mekamaru is like Godzilla size, and one thing I didn't pick up when reading the manga, but the anime adapted instead, was that the giant Mekamaru is actually screaming throughout the episode and during the fight with Mahito. When you're reading the manga, you don't really clock on that the giant Mekamaru is doing that. Well, at least your tribal chief didn't clock on to that fact, other than the obvious scream in chapter 82 when it screamed after the scene where Mekamaru used Simple Domain New Shadow and blew up Mahito's body. I know Mekamaru created him, but it felt like the giant Mekamaru was a separate character in itself. Because throughout the fight, even though Mekamaru was doing all the actions inside the robot, but majority of the scenes we had the giant machine beating up Mahito. The scene I loved the most was when the giant robot kicked Mahito. After all these special attacks with 2 years, 5 years worth of cursed energy, it was just a simple kick that sent Mahito flying. That had me rolling, I can't lie guys. But watching the latest episode really got me thinking about Mekamaru's character and what he brings to the story. And yes guys, I know his real name is Kokichi Muta, but I'm so used to calling him Mekamaru, so that is why I will be calling him Mekamaru throughout this video. But anyway, Mekamaru was heavily restricted from day one. When we first meet him, he's this silent guy who we assumed is just another run-of-the-mill side character that can potentially have a cool power, but will still remain a normal side character. But then we get into the fights in the Goodwill event arc and we see the backstory in chapter 38 when Mekamaru was fighting off against Panda. He's disgusted by Panda, calling him a doll, and throughout the fight he was explaining how bad his situation really is. The guy can't even go outside, even moonlight would damage his skin. Everything below the waist, he has no feeling. He can't feel his feet or his legs. He also mentioned he would give up being a Jujutsu sorcerer in a heartbeat if it meant that he could have a healthy body. And in order to finally achieve this body, he made a binding vow with Geto, aka Kenjaku, that he would leak information and in exchange, Mahito will give him a healthy body. The tragedy of it all is that he literally had to sell his soul to the devil in order to get what he desired the most. And that is literally a normal, healthy body. It puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Even us in real life, how we are blessed with good health and healthy bodies, we should count that as a blessing, as there are people out there who don't have that blessing, unfortunately. But what really got my attention was the disgust he had towards Panda during the Goodwill event arc. Because him and Panda are similar in the way they are using their bodies. Panda is a cursed corpse, whilst Mekamaru has a man-made cursed corpse to use whilst he is in his cave controlling the corpse. So they're not the same exactly, but not far off from each other. During the fight as well, you can see the bitterness in Mekamaru, saying how can a doll like Panda live freely, whilst a human like him cannot. Mekamaru sees both himself and Panda as disgusting monsters, but the fact that Panda is living freely gets him into the realization that he is the bigger, uglier monster than Panda himself. It was also revealed in this episode that Miwa wants to get close to Mekamaru, but because he feels like a monster, he can't let Miwa see him the way he is. That's why he made the deal with Kenjaku in order to feel like an actual human being and not an ugly monster. What I find interesting is that the cursed corpse Mekamaru has been using so far in this series and his army of robots that we saw in the previous episode all look the same. They don't look amazing or bad, just bog standard robots who have human characteristics and features. But then you see the ultimate giant Mekamaru in this episode and he looks way different to everything else that Mekamaru has created. When the giant Mekamaru did that scream after Mahito exploded due to simple domain, the machine legitimately looks like a monster. You would mistaken it for a kaiju, and you get that monster vibe from both the anime and the manga. That giant robot was Mekamaru's life's work. He embedded all of his life's cursed energy into it, and he made the robot look more like a monster than a human, like how he made all the other robots have more similar human features in the body shape and size. The giant Mekamaru represents Mekamaru himself. The way he made his ultimate weapon a monster is the way he was looking at himself, a monster. Only this time, he was inside the monster, rather than have his outer physique make him look like one. But ultimately, Mahito wins in the end. But Mekamaru gave him a damn good fight. But I can't believe he didn't make a run for it after he took out Mahito. Every time when he was saying, "I'm going to see everyone again," you knew that was a huge red flag. Even in the manga reading for the first time, it's just a setup for him to die. But just like how we saw Tony Stark make countless mistakes, Mekamaru made the mistake on going after Kenjaku, which gave Mahito that split second to attack him and end the fight. As bad of a mistake he made at the end, he did have Mahito on the ropes. He managed to damage Mahito's soul and tailored a strategy specifically for Mahito in this fight, which Kenjaku himself admitted and actually looked impressed by Mekamaru, to the point where he started to believe that he actually might beat Mahito. Mekamaru did make a deal with the devils, but you can understand where he's coming from. This is one of the positives of Jujutsu Kaisen, that the characters are all morally grey and realistic. The good guys are not fully good guys other than Yuji, but even he will go through it in Shibuya. That will test that inner goodness within him. And the villains like Hanami, who, if you remember, held back its domain expansion even though he's fighting both Todo and Yuji. Jogo wants a world of cursed spirits, which you can understand where Jogo is coming from. He just wants to live with his own kind and to be able to live freely with them in their own world. Kenjaku's plan, even us manga readers to this day don't know what his true end goal is. And of course, Sukuna was evil from the get-go, so Sukuna aside, on both sides of the coin, you can understand their points of view. You can of course root for the heroes in this story, but you can also see where the cursed spirits are coming from. And by the cursed spirits, I mean Kenjaku's group. Oh, and I guess Mahito as well, but Akutami had a role for Mahito anyway, with him being Yuji's blood enemy. But going back to my point, I get where Mekamaru is coming from. The guy suffered his whole life and he found a way out with Mahito and Kenjaku, so why wouldn't he take it? And as soon as he gained a new body, he went after Kenjaku and Mahito straight away. He was trying to right the wrong he committed by making a deal with them. The rest of the episode had us finally in Shibuya, with the curtain being pulled and Gojo entering the curtain. This is just a slow build-up because, as we all know, none of us are ready for what's about to happen. The manga was excellent in its delivery with this arc, but I can only imagine what the anime will be doing to make this arc more grand. But enough from me. What do you guys think of the latest episode of Jujutsu Kaisen? And what do you guys think about Mekamaru's character? Let me know in the comments down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the Shaman Tribe.